The great doors of the Galactic Assembly opened with a deep sound that echoed through the massive hall. Every eye turned toward the entrance. Delegates from 12 different species sat in their elevated seats, watching and waiting. They had heard that a human representative was coming. They expected something impressive. What they saw made them laugh. Walked through the doors alone. His steps were slow and uneven. His left leg dragged slightly behind him, and sparks flew from the knee joint of his armor with each movement. The armor itself was a ruin. Deep dents covered the chest plate. Burn marks spread across the shoulders like dark flowers. The right gauntlet was missing completely, showing his bare hand underneath. Dried blood, some red and some colors that did not belong to humans, stained the metal in patches. The hall fell into whispers first, then came the laughter. Kept walking. His face was hidden behind a cracked helmet. The display screen on the left side flickered on and off, showing broken lines of data. One of the antenna pieces on top had been snapped clean off. The armor made grinding sounds with every step, metal scraping against metal in ways it should not. Commander of the Empire was the first to speak loudly. He stood from his seat, his tall reptilian body covered in shining ceremonial armor that glowed with energy shields. His scales were deep green, and his eyes were sharp yellow. He pointed one clawed finger at and let out a barking laugh. "This is what Earth sends to represent them," shouted so the whole hall could hear. "A broken toy, a piece of garbage walking on two legs." The delegation laughed with their commander. Other species joined in. Even some who were friendly to humans looked away in shame. The ambassador covered her face with her 4 hands. The delegate shook his massive head slowly. Watched from the human section with growing horror. She was the senior diplomat for Earth at the Assembly. She had worked for 3 years to get humanity a chance to speak here. 3 years of meetings and favors and careful political games. And now, this man was destroying everything just by walking through the door. She rushed down from her seat and intercepted before he could reach the center stage. Her formal dress was dark blue with silver edges. Her black hair was pulled back tight. Her face showed controlled panic. "What is this?" she whispered urgently, grabbing his arm. The armor was cold and rough under her fingers. "I was told they were sending Captain Minu, a decorated officer, someone presentable. Who are you? What happened to you?" Stopped walking. He turned his helmet toward her. Through the cracked visor, she could see one eye looking at her. It was calm. Too calm for someone being laughed at by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Captain Minu is dead," said. His voice was flat and quiet through the helmet speakers, which crackled with static. "Everyone is dead. I am what is left." Felt ice spread through her chest. "What do you mean everyone is dead? Dead from what?" But did not answer. He gently removed her hand from his arm and continued walking toward the center of the hall. High Arbiter watched from the highest seat. He was old even by the standards of his long-lived species. His skin was pale silver, and his eyes were solid black. He had seen many things in his 400 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had seen wars that burned entire star systems. But he had never seen anyone walk into the assembly looking like they had crawled out of a battlefield and through hell itself. The laughter continued, but noticed something. The human kept walking. He did not stop. He did not react. He did not speed up or slow down. He moved with the patience of someone who had learned that the opinions of others meant nothing. Reached the center platform. The symbol of the Galactic Assembly was carved into the floor beneath his feet. A circle containing 12 stars, one for each founding species. Humans had no star. They were guests here, nothing more. He stood in the center and waited. The laughter slowly died down. Something about his stillness made people uncomfortable. Commander walked down from his seat, his armor clicking against the stone steps. He approached with a wide smile on his scaled face. "Tell me, human," said, circling like a predator examining weak prey. "Did your ship crash on the way here? Did you fight a war and lose badly? Or is this simply the best that your primitive species can produce? The delegates laughed again, played to his audience well. I have heard that humans are resilient, continued, that you survive in conditions that would kill other species, but resilience means nothing without strength, and look at you. He gestured at ruined armor. You cannot even maintain your equipment. Your armor is falling apart. Sparks are flying from your joints. You are an embarrassment to this assembly. Said nothing. Had made her way to the human section again. She was pulling up files on her, searching for any information about this soldier who had appeared instead of Captain Menu. Her fingers moved fast across the screen. Most of the files were locked. Security clearances she did not have. Black bars covering mission reports, redacted names and dates. But she found his service record. Sergeant First Class, assigned to the colony ship Horizon. Her blood went cold. Everyone knew about the Horizon. It was the greatest disaster in human space exploration history. A colony ship carrying 40,000 people, families, children, scientists and farmers and teachers and engineers, all heading to a new world to build a new life. The ship had been attacked 3 years ago. Unknown forces, no survivors. No survivors. Looked up from her and stared at the man standing in the center of the hall. The ruined armor suddenly looked different to her. The dents and burns and dried blood told a story she was only beginning to understand. Was still talking, still mocking, still playing to the crowd, but stood perfectly still in the center of it all, waiting, patient, like a stone in a river letting the water flow around him without moving. Did not know what was about to happen. But she knew, with sudden and terrible certainty, that the assembly had made a mistake by laughing. They had made a very serious mistake. Commander enjoyed the attention. He walked around in slow circles, his clawed feet clicking against the stone floor. The delegates watched with amusement. This was entertainment for them, a powerful commander mocking a broken human soldier. It was exactly the kind of show they enjoyed. High Arbiter called out, turning to face the elevated platform where sat. I wish to make a formal statement. Raised one silver hand, the hall fell silent. Speak, Commander. Straightened his posture. His green scales caught the light as he moved. I challenge Earth's right to address this assembly. I invoke the proof of strength protocol. The silence became heavier. Delegates leaned forward in their seats. Whispers spread like fire through dry grass. The proof of strength was an ancient law, older than most species in the room could remember. It had not been used in over 300 cycles. Shot to her feet. That protocol is outdated. It has not been invoked in centuries. You cannot possibly expect. The protocol remains valid, interrupted smoothly. It was never removed from assembly law. Any species may challenge a newcomer's right to speak by demanding a demonstration of combat ability. He turned to look at with contempt in his yellow eyes. If humans wish to have a voice among warrior races, they must prove they deserve one. High Arbiter closed his black eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, his face showed no emotion. The protocol is indeed still valid. Commander has the right to invoke it. This is absurd, argued. Her voice echoed through the hall. We are diplomats, not gladiators. Earth has proven itself through scientific achievement, through cultural exchange, through nothing, cut her off. Humans have been in this galaxy for barely 200 years. You have no great victories. You have no conquered enemies. You have no proof that you belong here. He gestured at again. And if this is your best warrior, then you certainly do not belong among us. The delegation cheered. Other species remained quiet, watching carefully. Politics in the assembly were complex. Many would benefit from seeing humans pushed out. Others preferred to stay neutral. None were willing to stand up and defend Earth's position. Spoke again. According to the protocol, the challenged party must either accept combat or forfeit their speaking rights for 50 cycles. He looked down at, human representative, do you understand what is being asked of you? had not moved during the entire exchange. He stood like a statue in his broken armor. Sparks still flew from his knee joint at random intervals. The crack in his helmet visor had spread slightly wider. "I understand," he said. His voice was calm through the static of his damaged speakers. "And do you have anything to say before you make your decision?" "No." Laughed. He does not even defend himself. He knows he cannot win. Perhaps he will show wisdom and surrender now, save himself the pain of what I will do to him. Was moving through the crowd trying to reach. She pushed past delegates who gave her looks of pity and scorn. Her mind was racing. There had to be another way, some legal argument, some technicality, something. She reached and grabbed his arm again. "You cannot do this," she hissed. "Look at yourself. Your armor is barely functional, is one of the best warriors in the military. He has killed hundreds in combat. This is suicide." Turned his head slightly toward her. Through the cracked visor she could see part of his face now. There was a scar running down his cheek. His eye was steady and dark. "Then it will be a good death," he said simply. "There is no such thing as a good death," snapped. "There is only death, and if you die, Earth loses its voice for 50 years. 50 years of being ignored. 50 years of being pushed to the edges of galactic politics. Is that what you want?" Was quiet for a moment. Then he placed his hand on her shoulder. His bare hand, the one without the gauntlet. His skin was rough with calluses and old scars. "I will not lose," he said. Before could respond, he stepped away from her and walked toward High Arbiter. He stopped at the base of the elevated platform and looked up. "I accept the challenge," announced. His voice carried through the hall despite the damaged speakers. "I will fight Commander according to the proof of strength protocol." The hall erupted. Delegates roared with excitement. Other species talked rapidly among themselves. Credits and favors were already being exchanged as bets were placed. Everyone knew how this would end. The broken human would be destroyed. It would be quick and brutal and entertaining. Spread his arms wide, accepting the cheers of his people. "Finally, some courage. I respect that, human. I will try to make your death quick, as a courtesy." "The combat will take place immediately," declared. "Clear the central floor. Activate the containment barriers. This assembly will witness the proof of strength." Workers rushed onto the floor. They removed furniture and pushed back the boundaries of the gathering area. Energy barriers rose from hidden slots in the floor, forming a transparent wall around what was now a combat arena. The barriers would protect the delegates from stray weapons fire or flying debris. Found herself pushed back with the rest of the crowd. She stood at the edge of the barrier, her hands pressed against the energy field. It hummed beneath her fingers. She looked down at her again. The file on was still open. Most of it was black bars and redacted information, but she kept reading, searching for anything that might explain why this man was so calm, so certain. Then she found something. A single line that had not been redacted. Perhaps it was overlooked. Perhaps someone wanted it to be seen. "Mission status, sole survivor, Horizon massacre, all hostiles eliminated." Read the line 3 times. Her brain refused to process it. The Horizon had been attacked by a force strong enough to kill 40,000 people, raiders with advanced weapons and ships. Military analysts had estimated at least 200 attackers based on the damage patterns. All hostiles eliminated. She looked up at. He was removing the broken pieces of equipment that would only slow him down. He dropped a damaged shoulder plate to the ground. He disconnected a sparking power cable from his back. Was doing warm-up exercises on the other side of the arena. His movements were fast and precise. His armor glowed with active shield technology. He looked like a warrior preparing for an easy victory. But was no longer looking at. She was looking at the human in the broken armor. The man who had survived something that should have been impossible. The man who had done something that should have been even more impossible after that. The combat horn was about to sound, and realized that she had no idea what she was about to witness. The arena was ready. The energy barriers hummed with power, creating a perfect circle of contained space. Delegates pressed close to the transparent walls, eager to watch what everyone believed would be a quick execution. Some held drinks in their hands. Others had food brought to their seats. This was entertainment for them, a show. Commander stood on one side of the arena. His armor was a masterpiece of engineering. Dark metal plates covered his reptilian body, each one reinforced with energy shields that glowed faint blue. His helmet had been designed to look like a predator's skull, with sharp edges and glowing eye slots. In his clawed hands, he held a plasma blade. The weapon hummed with contained fire, its edge burning white-hot. Stood on the opposite side. He had removed the most damaged pieces of his armor, but what remained still looked like a disaster. The chest plate was cracked down the middle. The leg armor sparked with every small movement. His helmet flickered between working and dead, the display cutting in and out randomly. He held no weapon. "Does the human need time to find a weapon?" called out mockingly. "Or does he plan to fight with his bare hands?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Reached down to his belt. He pulled out a simple combat knife. The blade was about 30 centimeters long. It was not an energy weapon. It was not enhanced with any technology. It was just metal, sharp and plain. The laughter grew louder. "A knife?" shook his head in disbelief. "You bring a knife to fight against a plasma blade, against armor. Human, I almost feel sorry for you." High Arbiter raised his hand. The crowd fell silent. The rules of the proof of strength are simple. Combat continues until one party yields, falls unconscious, or dies. There are no restrictions on weapons or tactics. Both parties have agreed to these terms. He paused. "Let the combat begin." A deep horn sounded through the hall. The noise echoed off the walls and faded into silence. Neither fighter moved. Stood in a ready position, his plasma blade held before him. He was waiting for to attack first. He wanted to see what the human would do. He wanted to enjoy this. Simply stood there. His knife hung loosely at his side. His broken helmet faced, but it was impossible to tell where he was actually looking. Seconds passed. The crowd grew restless. "Come then," growled. "Attack me. Show me this famous human resilience." Did not move. More seconds passed. His patience broke. He roared and charged across the arena, his plasma blade raised high. He was fast for his size, his powerful legs driving him forward like a missile. The blade came down in a killing arc, aimed at splitting from shoulder to hip. Stepped to the side. The movement was small and precise. The plasma blade missed him by centimeters and struck the floor, leaving a burning scar in the stone. Spun and slashed horizontally. Ducked. The blade passed over his head, close enough to leave a burned line across the top of his helmet. Another slash. Leaned back. Another, he stepped left. Another, he stepped right. He was not fighting. He was simply not being hit. The crowd watched in confusion. Was one of the fastest warriors in the military. His attacks were precise and deadly, but the human kept avoiding them, not with dramatic leaps or acrobatic moves, just small shifts, tiny adjustments, like he knew exactly where each attack would be before it arrived. "Stand still," roared. He launched a combination of strikes, each one faster than the last. His blade became a blur of white fire. The heat from the weapon made the air shimmer. Moved through the attacks like water through rocks. He never seemed to hurry. He never seemed to struggle. He just was not there when the blade arrived. Watched from behind the barrier, her hung forgotten in her hand. She could not look away from what she was seeing. Every analyst, every military expert, every combat trainer would have said that what was doing was impossible. Warriors trained from birth. Their reaction speed was legendary. Their combat techniques were studied across the galaxy. And this broken human in failing armor was making Commander look clumsy. Stopped attacking. He was breathing hard. Sweat dripped down his scaled face. His yellow eyes were wide with something that might have been the beginning of fear. "What are you?" he demanded. "How are you doing this?" Tilted his head slightly. The gesture seemed almost curious. He still had not attacked once. His knife remained at his side unused. "You are fast," said quietly. His voice came through his damaged speakers in broken static. "But you fight like someone who has never been afraid. You leave openings because you have never faced something that could hurt you." "I am a commander," spat. "I have killed hundreds of enemies." "You have killed prey," replied. "That is not the same." Screamed in rage and attacked again. This time his strikes were wild, driven by anger rather than skill. He swung his plasma blade in huge arcs, trying to force into a corner, trying to create a situation where the human could not escape. Let himself be pushed back. His feet moved across the stone floor in careful steps. He seemed to be retreating, giving ground. The crowd began to cheer, thinking had finally gained the advantage. Then Spak hit the energy barrier. He had nowhere else to go, smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. He raised his plasma blade for a final strike. "Now," said triumphantly, "now you die." The blade came down and caught it. Not with his armor, not with his knife, with his bare hand, the one without the gauntlet. The crowd gasped, pressed herself against the barrier, unable to believe what she was seeing. The plasma blade should have cut through flesh like paper. It should have severed his hand completely. Instead, his fingers were wrapped around the burning edge, holding it in place. Smoke rose from his grip. The smell of burning flesh filled the arena, but did not scream. He did not flinch. He held the blade and looked directly through his cracked visor. "My turn," he said. And the knife in his other hand moved. The knife moved like a living thing. It found the gap between shoulder plates before the commander could react. The blade slipped through the armor joint and sank into scaled flesh beneath. Screamed, he pulled back, tearing his plasma blade free from his grip. Blue blood flowed from the wound in his shoulder. His left arm hung lower than before, weakened. Stood where he was. His burned hand hung at his side. The flesh was blackened and smoking. Anyone else would have collapsed from pain, but simply flexed his fingers, testing what still worked, and raised his knife again. "First blood," he said calmly. "Do you yield?" His answer was a roar of fury. He attacked again, but now his movements were different. Fear had entered his technique. He swung too wide, committed too much to each strike. He was no longer fighting to win. He was fighting to survive. The crowd had gone silent. No one was laughing anymore. No one was drinking or eating. Every eye in the hall was fixed on the arena where something impossible was happening. Moved forward. For the first time in the fight, he was the aggressor. His steps were measured and deliberate. Each one brought him closer to while avoiding the desperate swings of the plasma blade. "You asked what I am," said as he walked. "I will tell you." He ducked under a horizontal slash and drove his elbow into his damaged shoulder. The commander stumbled, crying out in pain. 3 years ago, I was a sergeant on a colony ship called the Horizon. 40,000 humans were on that ship, families, children, people who just wanted to build new lives on a new world. Swung his blade downward, stepped aside and slashed with his knife, opening a cut across the commander's leg where the armor did not fully cover. Raiders attacked us. They came out of nowhere. 200 ships against one colony vessel with minimal defenses. They killed everyone. Another strike from, another dodge from, another cut, this time across the back of his hand, forcing him to nearly drop his weapon. I watched my wife die. I watched my daughter die. I watched 40,000 people burn while I hid in a cargo bay, too wounded to move, too weak to fight. Was backing away now. His armor was marked with cuts. His movements were slow and desperate. He tried to activate his shield boost, but had already cut the power cable at his hip 2 exchanges ago. The commander had not even noticed. The raiders left me for dead. They took what they wanted and flew away, and I lay there in the wreckage for 3 days, surrounded by bodies, waiting to die. Stopped walking. He stood in front of who had backed himself against the energy barrier. The positions from earlier were now reversed. The predator had become the prey. But I did not die, continued. Instead, I made a promise to my wife, to my daughter, to all 40,000 people who trusted that ship to keep them safe. His knife hand moved. The blade pressed against the soft scales of his throat, just above where his armor ended. I promised I would find every single raider who attacked us, every pilot, every gunner, every commander, and I would show them what happens when you hurt humans. His plasma blade fell from his shaking hand. It clattered to the ground and deactivated, the white fire dying away. His yellow eyes were wide with terror. It took me 12 years, said. 47 star systems. I learned how to track ships through hyperspace. I learned how to fight in zero gravity. I learned how to survive on planets that would kill any normal person in hours. I learned how to kill in ways you cannot imagine. Was crying. She did not know when she had started. The tears ran down her face as she listened to speak. Her had fallen to the ground, forgotten. The delegates watched in stunned silence. Some of the more sensitive species had turned away. Others could not look away, transfixed by the broken human who had turned into something else entirely. 200 ships attacked the horizon, said. 200 crews, perhaps 10,000 raiders in total. He leaned closer too. His cracked visor was centimeters from the commander's face. I killed them all. Made a small sound. It might have been a whimper. Every single one, alone, with this armor that you laughed at, with this knife that you mocked. I hunted them across the galaxy. I found their bases and burned them. I found their families and made them watch. I became the monster they were afraid to name. Pulled back slightly, the knife remained at its throat. This armor is broken because I have been at war for 12 years without rest. These scars are broken because I have fought battles that would destroy armies. This body is broken because I have given everything to keep my promise. He tilted his head, that curious gesture again. So I ask you one more time, Commander of the Empire, do you yield, or do I add one more name to my count? His mouth opened and closed. No words came out. His legs gave way beneath him, and he slid down the energy barrier until he was sitting on the ground. His magnificent armor was covered in his own blood. His reputation was destroyed. His pride was gone. I yield, he whispered. I yield. Nodded once. He stepped back and lowered his knife. The hall remained silent. No one knew what to say. No one knew what they had just witnessed. Then reached up to his helmet. His fingers found the release catches on either side. You wanted to know what humans are capable of, he said, addressing not just but the entire assembly. You laughed at my armor. You called me a broken toy. You thought we were weak because we are young and few. The catches clicked open. Let me show you what we really are. And he began to remove his armor. The helmet came off first. The crowd drew in a collective breath. His face was a map of violence. A thick scar ran from his forehead across his left eye and down to his jaw. The eye itself was artificial, a simple mechanical replacement that glowed faint red. More scars covered his cheeks and chin, some smooth and old, others rough and newer. But it was the marks on his forehead that made people stare. Symbols had been burned into his skin deliberately. They were not random. They formed patterns, words in a language that few in the hall recognized. High Arbiter leaned forward in his seat. His black eyes narrowed. He knew that script. It was ancient, pre-galactic, a language used by raiders and pirates in the outer reaches before civilization came to those stars. The marks translated roughly to the one who follows. Set his helmet on the ground carefully like it was something precious despite its damage. Then his hands moved to the clasps on his chest plate. Click, click, click. The broken armor split down the middle and fell away. Gasps echoed through the hall. His torso was more scar than skin. Plasma burns covered his ribs, the flesh there melted and reformed in twisted patterns. Claw marks raked across his stomach, 4 parallel lines that had healed into raised ridges. Bullet wounds dotted his chest, small circles of damaged tissue that formed a constellation of old violence. A delegate fainted. Her attendants rushed to help her. Continued removing his armor. The shoulder pieces came off, revealing arms that were wrapped in more scar tissue. His left arm had been broken so many times that the bones had healed slightly crooked. His right arm had a long burn scar that spiraled from wrist to shoulder, like something had coiled around it and squeezed with heat. The leg armor took longer to remove. The damaged servo had fused to part of the metal and had to force it apart with his bare hands. When the pieces finally fell away, his legs showed the same story as the rest of him. Scars, burns, old wounds that would have killed most species. He stood in the center of the arena, wearing only the thin that went beneath his armor. Every part of his body told a story of pain and survival. Then he turned around. The hall fell into absolute silence. His back was covered in marks, not scars from battle. These were deliberate, carved into his flesh with precision. They were tally marks, organized into groups of 5, each group representing something killed. But the tallies were written in 7 different scripts. It had been recovered by an assistant. She held it now with trembling hands, running translation programs over the image of back. The results came in 1 language at a time. The first script was military notation, 112 marks. The second was merchant counting, 44 marks. The third was warrior tradition, 207 marks. The fourth was an unknown language that the translator could not identify, 361 marks. The 5th, 6th, and 7th scripts were equally foreign. Together, they added over 1,000 more marks. Almost 3,000 tallies in total. 3,000 beings killed by 1 human. Looked up from her, her face was pale. She understood now what the marks meant. They were not trophies, they were not celebrations, they were a record, a promise kept. For the 40,000. Every tally represented vengeance taken. Every mark was a raider who had participated in the Horizon massacre and paid for it with their life. Had learned the writing systems of every species involved in the attack. He had carved their deaths into his own flesh using their own languages. He turned back to face the assembly. His expression was calm. There was no pride in his eyes, no satisfaction, only a deep and terrible weariness. "You asked what humans are capable of," he said. His voice was quiet but carried through the silent hall. "This is your answer." He gestured at his body. "We do not forget, we do not surrender, we do not stop." He looked at Commander, who was still sitting against the energy barrier, staring up at him with wide eyes. "You live for 300 years, you think in centuries, you plan for generations," shook his head slowly. "Humans live for less than 100 years, we are fragile, we break easily, but that is what makes us dangerous." He stepped forward and flinched back despite the energy barrier already being at his back. "We know we do not have forever, so when we commit to something we give everything, every second, every breath, every drop of blood in our bodies. We compress a lifetime of determination into whatever time we have." Looked up at the assembly. Thousands of alien faces stared down at him. Some were afraid, some were confused, some were beginning to understand. "I spent 12 years hunting the raiders who killed my family. 12 years. That is more than 1/10 of a human lifetime. I gave those years without hesitation, without regret, because some things are more important than survival." He touched one of the scars on his chest. His fingers traced the raised tissue gently. "My wife gave me this scar, not the wound itself, but the strength to survive it. Every time I wanted to die, I remembered her face. Every time I wanted to give up, I heard my daughter's voice. His hand dropped back to his side. You think humans are weak because we are small and young and fragile, but our weakness is also our strength. We know we are mortal. We know time is limited, so we make every moment count. High Arbiter stood from his seat. The movement was slow and deliberate. Every eye in the hall turned to him. He looked down at for a long time. His ancient face was unreadable. Human, he said finally, why are you here? You have completed your vengeance. You have kept your promise. Why come to this assembly? Met his gaze without flinching. Because the raiders who attacked the horizon were not alone. They were scouts, probing our defenses, testing our responses. The hall stirred with uneasy murmurs. Something larger is coming, said. Something that views all of us as prey, humans, every species in this assembly. He spread his arms, showing his body one more time. I am here to warn you, and I am here to tell you that humanity stands ready to fight. We have been fighting alone in the dark spaces for years, but we cannot hold the line forever. He lowered his arms and stood straight. We need allies, and you need us. That is why I am here. The assembly erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted at each other in a dozen different languages. Some demanded more information, others accused of lying. A few tried to leave the hall entirely, only to be stopped by security protocols that locked the doors during active sessions. High Arbiter raised both hands. His voice boomed through the speakers embedded in the walls, cutting through the noise. Silence! There will be order in this assembly. The shouting died down slowly. Delegates returned to their seats with nervous movements. The energy in the room had changed completely. Fear had replaced amusement. The entertainment they expected had become something much more serious. Commander had been helped to his feet by his subordinates. He stood at the edge of the arena, his wounds being treated by medical drones, but his eyes never left. The contempt was gone. In its place was something complicated, respect mixed with fear mixed with shame. Human, said, addressing directly, you make serious claims. You speak of threats that could endanger the entire galaxy. Do you have evidence? Nodded slowly, I do. He touched a control on his wrist. It was one of the few pieces of technology on his that still worked. A small holographic projector activated, displaying images in the air above the arena. The first image showed a planet. It was beautiful, covered in blue oceans and green forests. Then the image shifted to show the same planet after. The oceans were black. The forests were gone. The atmosphere itself seemed to have been stripped away, leaving a dead rock floating in space. This is Velar 7, said. A colony world in the outer reaches. 2 years ago it had a population of 6 million. Now it has nothing. The image changed again. Another planet before and after, life reduced to death. Station, a trading hub, 50,000 residents gone in one night. Another image. A fleet of ships, hundreds of them floating dead in space. No visible damage, just lifeless. The third expansion fleet. 12 warships, support vessels, troop transports, 8,000 soldiers. They responded to a distress signal and were never heard from again. We found them 6 months later. Every person on every ship was dead, but there were no wounds, no battle damage, nothing to explain what killed them. The holographic images faded, looked around the hall. Humanity has been tracking these incidents for 3 years. We have lost 7 colonies, 30,000 civilians, an entire military division, and we have been telling no one because we did not think anyone would believe us. A delegate stood. His massive form towered over those around him. Why should we believe you now? These images could be fabricated. This could all be a trick to gain sympathy and political power. It could be, agreed, but it is not. He touched his wrist control again. This time the hologram showed something different. A shape. A ship, perhaps, but unlike anything the assembly had seen before. It was organic and mechanical at the same time, curves mixed with angles, surfaces that seemed to shift and move even in the still image. We captured this image 3 months ago. One of our deep space probes transmitted it before going silent. This is what destroyed Velar 7. This is what killed the third expansion fleet. The hall stared at the image. Some delegates leaned forward, trying to understand what they were seeing. Others leaned back, instinctively wanting to be as far from the image as possible. "We do not know what they are," continued. "We do not know where they come from. We do not know what they want. All we know is that they are coming, and they do not negotiate." Spoke for the first time since his defeat. His voice was rough but stronger than expected. "How do you know they do not negotiate?" Turned to face him, "Because I tried." The hall went still. After I completed my hunt, I had nothing left to live for. My family was dead. My purpose was fulfilled. I decided to find these new threats and either learn what they wanted or die in the attempt. He touched another scar on his body, this one near his heart. "I found one of their scouts, a small vessel barely larger than a shuttle. I disabled its weapons and boarded it. I tried to communicate in every language I knew. I offered peace. I offered surrender. I offered anything they wanted." His hand dropped from the scar. "They could not speak. They had no language as we understand it. They communicated through some form of direct mental contact, and when they touched my mind, I felt what they wanted." His voice dropped lower. "They want to consume everything, every planet, every species, every resource. They are not evil, they are not cruel, they simply see the galaxy as food. We are not enemies to them, we are not obstacles, we are prey." Felt sick. She had been a diplomat for 15 years. She had handled difficult negotiations. She had dealt with hostile species and complicated treaties, but nothing had prepared her for this. "How did you escape?" she found herself asking. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Looked at her. For a moment, something like gratitude flickered in his eyes. Perhaps he was glad someone was still willing to talk to him like a person instead of a symbol. "I killed it," he said simply. "The scout. I killed it with my knife after it released my mind. But before it died, I saw something in its thoughts, a direction, a purpose. They are heading this way, not just to human space, to all of galactic civilization. They have been watching us for a long time, waiting until we were developed enough to be worth harvesting." He looked up at, "I came here today because humanity cannot fight this alone. We are too few. Our technology is too primitive. Our military is too small. But together, all of us, we might have a chance." He spread his hands, showing his scars one more time. "I have given everything I have to protect my people. I will give more if needed. But I am just one human. We need armies. We need fleets. We need the combined strength of every species in this assembly." Stepped forward. His subordinates tried to stop him, but he pushed past them. He walked across the arena until he stood in front of. The two warriors looked at each other, one broken and one wounded and humbled. "I mocked you," said quietly. "I laughed at your armor, I called you weak." "You did," agreed. "I was a fool." Reached up and removed his helmet. His scaled face was twisted with emotion. He dropped the helmet to the ground and then slowly lowered himself to one knee. "The Empire will stand with humanity," he declared. His voice carried through the hall. "We will fight beside you. We will die beside you if necessary. This I swear on my blood and the blood of my ancestors." The hall erupted again, but this time the noise was different. It was the sound of change beginning. High Arbiter watched Commander kneel before the human. In his 400 years, he had seen many moments that changed history. He had witnessed the signing of the Galactic Peace Accords. He had been present when the ended their 1,000-year war. He had stood in this very hall when the first contact with humanity had been established. But he had never seen anything like this. A proud commander, one of the finest warriors of his generation, kneeling before a single human, not because he had been forced to, not because of political pressure, but because he had witnessed something that broke through his arrogance and touched something deeper. Stood from his elevated seat. The movement drew every eye in the hall. When a high arbiter moved during a session, it meant something important was about to happen. Slowly, with the careful dignity of his centuries, descended from his platform. His silver robes flowed behind him as he walked down the ancient steps carved by species long extinct. Each step took him closer to the arena floor. Each step carried the weight of galactic tradition. The delegates watched in stunned silence. A high arbiter had not left the elevated platform during an assembly session in over 200 years. The protocols were clear. The arbiter remained above, neutral, separate from the proceedings below. Reached the arena floor. The energy barrier had been deactivated after the combat ended. He walked past Commander, still kneeling, and stopped in front of. The two beings stood facing each other. The ancient silver alien and the human soldier was taller, his body elegant with centuries of refined genetics. Was broken, his body a record of violence and survival. Human said, "You have claimed many things today. You have shown us scars and images. You have spoken of threats and warnings." Met his gaze without flinching. He had faced death too many times to be intimidated by ceremony. "But more than any of that," continued, "you have shown us something rare. You have shown us what you are willing to sacrifice, not with words, with your flesh, with your years, with everything you had." Raised one silver hand and placed it over his heart. This was an ancient gesture, older than the assembly itself. It signified recognition of an equal. In all of galactic history, a high arbiter had performed this gesture only 3 times. Each time had marked a turning point in civilization. "I believe you," said simply. Then he bowed. The hall exploded into chaos again, but this time no one tried to restore order. Delegates were standing, shouting, some in protest and others in support. The ambassador performed her species gesture of deep respect, all 4 arms crossing over her chest. The representative slammed his massive fist against his seat in the traditional warrior's salute. One by one, delegates began to stand. Some followed in his gesture of recognition. Others simply stood in silence, showing respect in their own ways. The delegation, following their commander's lead, all dropped to one knee. Watched through tears, she could not stop. She had spent years fighting for humanity's place in the galaxy through paperwork and speeches and careful political maneuvering. And now everything had changed in a single hour because one broken soldier had refused to stay down. Stood in the center of it all. He did not react to the chaos around him. His expression remained calm, almost distant. He had not come here for recognition. He had not come here for glory. He had come to deliver a warning and ask for help. Everything else was noise. Straightened from his bow and raised his hands again. Gradually, the hall fell quiet. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority that only centuries of leadership could provide. The assembly will vote. The question is simple. Do we grant humanity full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities that includes? Do we commit our resources to investigating the threat that is described? Do we prepare for war? He looked around the hall. All those in favor. The voting lights activated throughout the chamber. Green for yes, red for no. For a moment, nothing happened. The delegates hesitated, years of political calculation warring with what they had just witnessed. Then the first green light appeared. The section. Commander had voted and his delegation followed instantly. More green lights. The species after species, delegation after delegation. The lights spread through the hall like a wave. When it was done, not a single red light remained. Unanimous. Nodded slowly. It is decided. Earth is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Council. A joint military task force will be formed immediately to address the threat, and will serve as humanity's official representative to the War Council. Finally showed a reaction, a slight tightening around his eyes. This was not what he had expected. "High Arbiter," he said, "I am a soldier, I am not a diplomat." "No," agreed. "You are not, but diplomats did not convince this assembly today. You did. And if we are to fight a war against an enemy that does not negotiate, we will need warriors who can speak for their people." He placed his hand on shoulder. "Besides, I suspect you have more to give. Your vengeance is complete. Your promise is kept. But you are still standing, still fighting. A man who has nothing left to live for does not walk into an assembly and change the course of galactic history." Was silent for a long moment, then slowly he nodded. "There is one more thing," he said quietly. "What is that?" Looked down at the pieces of his broken armor scattered across the arena floor. The chest plate, the helmet, the leg pieces, all damaged, all still functional enough to keep him alive through years of impossible battles. "I made my promise for the 40,000 who died," he said. "My wife, my daughter, all of them. I kept that promise, but now I have a new one." He knelt and picked up his helmet. His fingers traced the crack in the visor. "My wife believed that humans could be something great, not just survivors, not just warriors, something more. She wanted our daughter to grow up in a galaxy that respected us, that saw us as equals." He stood and looked at. "I will fight your war, High Arbiter. I will lead your warriors. I will give everything I have left, but not for vengeance this time, for the future." Had made her way to the arena floor. She stood a few feet away, watching and listening. When finished speaking, she stepped forward. "You will not fight alone," she said. "That is the one thing I can promise you. Whatever comes next, you will not face it alone." Looked at her. For a moment, something like warmth flickered in his damaged eyes. "Thank you," he said simply. He began gathering his armor. Piece by piece, he collected the broken shell that had kept him alive through 12 years of war. He would repair it. He would wear it again. And when the real enemy came, he would be ready. The assembly began to disperse. Delegates were already making calls to their governments, reporting what had happened, preparing for the changes to come. The galaxy had shifted today. Nothing would be the same. But as walked out of the hall, his broken armor cradled in his arms, he paused at the great doors. He looked back at the assembly one last time. The laughter was gone. The contempt was gone. In their place was something he had not expected to see. Hope. He turned and walked away. There was work to do, a war to prepare for, a future to build. And humanity was no longer fighting alone.